Hey guys, what's up? Ugh. I'm here with a review of a movie, but before I get into it, I've got to get some fucking booze flowing because this is a heavy one. Yeah, I'll just fucking pour the rest of it in there. Fuck it. Oh god, that's a little too much vodka. Cool bottle though. Either way. Tonight we have a film, the newest picture from Phil Stevens, director of cult hits like Lung, which is a really interesting kind of post-apocalyptic nightmare movie. I personally really like this one. It's shot in black and white. And, yeah, I enjoy it quite a bit. I don't really have much to say. And the film and another film he did, which tonight's movie is a sequel to, Flowers, which this is the 3-disc DVD, edition with, I think it has the soundtrack. Yeah, bonus soundtrack. Which is a really, really amazing little low-budget psychological horror title. I really liked this when I finally got around to seeing it last year, and I've watched it a few times since then, and I've appreciated it more and more as time has gone on. Well, tonight's movie is the sequel to it, Flowers 2, which this is the backer copy, the donation copy, I guess. I donated $30 towards the film, and I got a signed, limited to I think 300 copy of it early, as well as some goodies like this limited to 200 poster of Flowers 2, which is all autographed, which is very, very cool. Got a what looks like a fucking bookmark of different artwork for Flowers, Lung, and Flowers 2. And got some nice little postcard size, prints of images of, the posters on both sides. I really like this artwork. But, of frames from the film, as well as a thank you letter from Phil that is printed onto the back of a autographed picture of Phil himself. Also a official Flowers 2 backer pen, which is cool, I'll put that on my hat, maybe, I don't know. But either way, we're talking about Flowers 2. Now, the first Flowers was a very interesting movie. It was this really surreal, grimy, disgusting, artful film, and I really appreciated it for what it was. It's essentially a film about a bunch of women who wake up in the crawl space of the man who has murdered them, and they go through a kind of weird purgatory that is essentially just the killer's house, and they relive their final moments and their death. And it's a film without any dialogue. It's very somber, it's very gross and dingy and dirty and grimy looking, and it's honestly kind of a masterpiece in a lot of ways. This sequel is pretty much the same premise. The film starts with the killer who is celebrating his 60th birthday with a makeshift birthday cake before killing himself, and also his house is full of corpses. It's dirty, trash everywhere. Again, if there's one thing that Phil Stevens is great at with his films, it is making really nice, really nice sets, and that's something I will always compliment his films on, even if I don't necessarily like them. That being said, after he kills himself, the film continues to follow what I guess I can assume is his last victim before his suicide. I think. Now, I want to get some gripes I have with the film out of the way. The movie is shot in a kind of cheap handheld style. I can't remember if the first one was shot in that style, but the camera quality, the picture quality, looked a lot cheaper in this film. And just the camera work in general just didn't feel the same. To be honest, it's been a minute since I watched Flowers, but I watched it in like December. That's relatively recently, and I remember it being a lot more kind of still and artful, not necessarily doing a handheld kind of close-up cinema verite style. And the thing is, it doesn't even necessarily feel like cinema verite, but that's just something I kind of really have to point out. The film looks pretty cheap. However, the sets, the gore effects done by both Phil Stevens, and some props are made by James Bell, who is an amazing filmmaker who is doing all kinds of weird short gore films. And, you know, everything else, like, a lot of the stuff in this movie is really good. The sets, the atmosphere, the gore effects, it's so good. The film is a little slow at times, which, you know, kind of sucks. I always felt like the first one is very moderately paced. You know, it goes for a bit and then throws something disturbing at you, throws something very brutal and disgusting and inhuman at you, and then it just takes some time away from it again, and then goes back into it again. This film kind of doesn't do that. Also, I gotta mention one other complaint. In the first Flowers film, there were, I think, 4 or 5 women who go through this house and relive their final moments and their death. And as a result, the film is, like, just consistently depressing and disturbing and nasty. With this one, you follow one woman who is one of his victims, and it's just like, isn't a sequel supposed to outdo the predecessor? Like, I was expecting there to be even more women. I was expecting maybe double the runtime. I don't know. That was just something that I found really disappointing about it, is really the lack of, like, victims in the film. There's only one. God. You know, and yeah, whatever. Fuck. Okay, let me... Also, the set pieces for this film, for the weird purgatory that the film kind of takes place in, are a little too surrealistic, a little too kind of fantastic, I guess, like fantasy-based, maybe, because instead of it feeling like a recreation of the killer's house, and he's just not home, and they're seeing their memories, you know, through holes in the walls, the movie kind of feels like it's the character going through a weird, fucked up, surreal nightmare world, like Alice in Wonderland combined with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which sounds really cool. And don't get me wrong, this film is kind of cool in some ways. Again, the sets are very nice and everything. There's nothing really there in terms of acting because there's no dialogue. So I can't really say much about that. The, you know, use of sets, the killer's house, especially like when it, you know, the purgatory stuff, it reminded me less of the first Flowers and more of Jan Svankmeyer's adaptation of Alice in Wonderland, Alice from 1988, which is a really great movie, but that's because it's a weird version of Alice in Wonderland where the rabbit is a stuffed dead rabbit, and the caterpillar on the mushroom is a sock puppet with human teeth and eyes, and all the sets for Wonderland are literally just dirty Yugoslavian apartments in the 80s. It's or Czechoslovakian apartments in the 80s. It has a aesthetic to it, and it works. And that's kind of what it reminded me of. Again, film is slow, and it's really not as brutal as the first Flowers film. I was expecting this to be absolutely all over the place. Don't get me wrong. There is gore. There are dead bodies. There's a corpse in, like, every shot of this film. However, like, some of the nastiest stuff in the first one, I remember one scene in particular of the killer, like, naked, covering himself in the innards and blood of a woman he just murdered. I remember that being a scene. And there's nothing really even as bad as that in this movie. And that's kind of what really sucks about it. Again, only one victim, so that really minimizes the amount of brutality you could have in the film. And I'm not somebody who's like, oh, this movie wasn't disturbing enough, so therefore it's bad. Because this movie still has a lot of good qualities to it. It's just, I was expecting something a little different, I guess. And I'm kind of disappointed by it. But still, I was into it, I would say. I liked this film quite a bit. You know, I kind of wish it would have gone the direction it went with the whole surreal nightmare Alice in Wonderland kind of thing, with more than just one victim, because then you could get even more surreal set pieces in there. But still, it's whatever. This movie, you know, as its own thing, it's good, but compared to the first Flowers and Lung, this is a very mid-tier film. Like, if you enjoy Phil Stevens' work, you'll probably appreciate this, but I kind of just feel like this is very... It's very... I don't want to say mediocre, but it's... You know, the first time I would say, like, hey, you know, step it up a bit, to you know, I don't know how to put it, but this is just a pretty fucking mid-tier movie. It's not anything super amazing. However, I think people will really appreciate it, and I definitely appreciate it, and I enjoyed it. So, you know, there's that. To be completely honest, I don't know if I'd ever watch it again, and that's kind of a problem, because the first Flowers I've watched 4 times in the last year, and I've enjoyed it and appreciated it every single time I've watched it. With this one, I'm just like, I'm one and done. Like, I don't really kind of want to see this again. Like, yeah, it was cool, but I'm very on the fence with this film. If that wasn't obvious, but I still appreciate the effort that went in, and I appreciate the art of it. So I'll give it that. Either way, this movie is probably like a 3 out of 5, maybe 3.5. If it eventually grows on me, it might not, I don't know. But anyway, guys, that's it for now. This is Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews, signing off. Peace.